Next, I want to introduce Athena Foulet and Lori Halverson, who will be joining us to talk about this panel on how to hold an effective advocacy meeting. So starting with Athena, would you like to introduce yourself to our community?
Sure. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to meet other RPCVs, and it's a pleasure to be able to continue to contribute to this third goal work that we're doing in perpetuating both interest and funding for all things related to the Peace Corps. As the slide says, my name is Athena Foulet. I was a Peace Corps volunteer to Uzbekistan in 99 to 2001. So shout out over there to Christy, who was in Kazakhstan, I hear, give or take around the same time as I was. I have been working, I've lived in Washington, D.C. now for about 18 years, and I've been going to the Hill for about 10 of those years. And a few years ago, I met up with Jonathan and leadership over at NPCA, who do a fantastic job. I can echo the words that Joel and Tim have been preparing. Like, you are so well prepared, or the materials have been so well put together for you to go in there and have fantastic conversations with all of your electeds. But I won't go too far down that hole unless Lori wanted to do a quick introduction, but good to see you all.
Yes, Lori, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, definitely. Thank you. So excited to be here with y'all. And I apologize for my tardiness, but I'm so glad I was able to make it on. My name is Lori Halverson. I'm an RPCV from Burkina Faso, 07 to 09. And I was a health volunteer. And now, as it says, I live in Louisiana. I work in the nonprofit sector as well within an AmeriCorps program called City Year. And I've been doing advocacy coordinator work for 2 years. I'm not quite sure, to be honest, but we've had some pretty great meetings here in Baton Rouge, and excited to share a little bit more about that. And just want to echo what Athena said before about all the amazing resources that are at all of your fingertips. So excited to share a little more about that too.
Thank you. So I'll ask both of you these questions, but starting with Athena, how do you prepare for your meetings? How have you prepared? What are some tips that you can give to people when they're preparing for their meetings? What should they be doing right now? And how should they go about that?
Great. So yes, thank you. The first is absolutely read everything you can, right? I think as Peace Corps volunteers, generally speaking, we're very curious and group that likes to stay informed. So all of the information that has been provided for you are fantastic resources. Definitely read what you're able to do. That said, understand that come the moment of your meeting, the training that was done earlier was fantastic. Don't be, a couple of things I've noted is don't be disappointed if the meeting runs short, right? So these people on the Hill are extremely busy. If you were doing this in person, you might have been meeting in the hallway kind of a situation. So keep in mind that some of those most effective meetings tend to be on the shorter end. So that's one. I guess don't be so put off if for some reason you feel that you're not getting your this sort of FaceTime, this Mr. Smith goes to Washington kind of experience, right? Two, I would say that keep it relevant to your district. So we've heard some fantastic points about ways that this is going to impact American public diplomacy and citizen to citizen diplomacy that happens in the world. All of that is fantastic. And you're coming from a place of authenticity when talking about that, given your experiences. But something I would add to that list is talk about how what you're doing has now impacted your community back home. So how has your understanding of Burkina Faso, Uzbekistan, or wherever you served impacting your family's lives, your friends' lives, your community's lives, where you're working now? In any way that you can tie that piece into the story would be critical, because they want to see, I know a lot of us would love to talk about the time that they were abroad and how impactful that was for the country that you were in. Also a very important piece of that. But as district representatives here in the United States, they're going to want to see, which is why those state one pages are fantastic for this. They're going to want to see the return of investment into American communities, into the American experiences. So I would urge you all to take a moment to think about how you can, again, make it relevant to your current work, to your current life, to your current situation. Continue to make it personal and firsthand. These are, the talking points are good. So consider the talking points kind of like the bones of what you are, the message that you're trying to get across, by putting some meat and spin around it with your own personal experiences while you are on your Peace Corps experience time. And lastly, this is kind of like a pro tip, always be gracious, always be thankful. If you can send a quick email afterwards, if you are on social media, hit them on Twitter with just like a quick thank you. So fantastic. It was a fantastic opportunity speaking with Congresswoman Foote this afternoon. So happy to hear her support S32 if she's in the Senate, but she's in the House. So happy that she's there to support HR 1456, 1459, 1456. And we look forward to continued support for Peace Corps in the coming years, kind of things. Just a quick message like that. Chances are you'll get a retweet. Chances are you'll get a like, but at the very least, it's a good way to acknowledge publicly that they took the meeting and that they're in support of it, and they're going to love that. They're going to eat that up. If again we were in person, taking pictures with the staffer, taking pictures in front of the door with the flags and the signs to retweet and post on social would also be very well received. And Jonathan, on that point, or Miriam, I'm sorry, is there a hashtag you would like folks to use? I would also include that at some point. That might have been in the materials if so, but yeah, that would probably be the summation of what I'd have to share. So thanks.
Thank you. We should have a hashtag, Jonathan. Lori, do you have any ideas as well for preparing for these meetings and how you've prepared for them in the past? Can you share that? Any tips and tricks you have as well?
Definitely, yeah. First of all, definitely just double clicking on everything Athena said. She definitely nailed it, and I wholeheartedly agree. A couple things I would add. Just a reiteration, Athena said it, read things, get familiar with the legislation. If you're like me, like this is not a world in which I'm like super familiar, you know, I'm not super into politics and all the terms and stuff. It's not second nature to me, but when it comes to these meetings, I do my homework. So at least when I'm walking into that meeting, I am super familiar with the legislation we want to talk about, because they will throw out, you know, numbers, HR, whatever, this, that, terms. And so it's really good to be familiar. So you're not kind of going, yeah, that one's great. We support it, you know, like really get familiar. So, it, you know, it takes a little homework, but you're just gonna be that much more prepared for the meeting. To that end, my second recommendation would be to absolutely have a set agenda, create it in advance, share it with the office with whom you're meeting. Oftentimes they're also gonna request that you share who is going to be there, especially if it's in person. So make sure that you're planning all this out in advance, right? Make sure you're reaching out to your other RPCVs in the area, setting a firm deadline of when you need to know who's going to be joining you, because they're going to ask those questions and you want to be able to tell them everybody's name. And then what I also try to do, which I highly recommend, is have a prep meeting with your fellow RPCVs or whomever is going to be joining you. It's actually easier in the virtual world because it's a little easier to coordinate schedules. We have a meeting coming up on the 24th, and we're trying to coordinate time to sit together online next week just to prepare. That way you're also giving everyone a chance to kind of share like how involved they want to be. Some of your fellow RPCVs might be like, I don't want to say anything, I'm just here for support. Others might want to be more involved, so you can really nail out those details ahead of time. And then the last thing I'll say kind of contradicts what I just said, but the other thing I'd share is be prepared and be open to the meeting going whatever direction it will go. Right? You may come in with this hardcore agenda and you want to talk about X and Y and Z. But like Athena mentioned, it may be quicker than you thought. It may start later than you thought. It may be a walking meeting as opposed to a sit down. You may end up not speaking with the legislator themselves. So just be really open and, you know that any kind of face time you're getting is positive, right? Anytime that you have a chance to share and talk and with whomever in that office, it's going to be a win. So don't get tripped up if they start talking about something else, you know, or go off on a tangent about how they wanted to be in the Peace Corps, but they never got a chance because they had to do this, but their, you know, chief of staff is applying, you know, you just roll with it, right? Because any of those conversations are gonna, they're gonna be something that's remembered. So be prepared, but be open too.
Can I, yeah, thank you, Lori. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you there. This, what we've talked about a lot this evening has been, you know, talking points, and we have statistics and all of that. That is very good, and that'll, being informed and educated in these discussions will absolutely be in your favor. But at the same time, none of you are, well, I don't know, but most of you are probably not lobbyists, right? So you're coming in there as a constituent. act like a constituent, talk about your personal firsthand experiences, and that will come across in those discussions, because these people are taking 8 to 10 meetings a day similar to this, right? So I search them on LinkedIn to see who staffer I'm going to talk to, if they studied abroad, if they have like any kind of international experience. Take a look at the member of Congress to see if there's a region of the world that they're particularly passionate about or recently traveled with, to make that kind of small talk introductions a way to segue into the larger discussion at hand. And I've been seeing some chatter back and forth about just how do you cross that sort of bipartisan line? To the question and the role play that was happening earlier, a response to something like that would be me like, how can we fund this when there are so many other priorities? My response to that would be, how can you not fund this? This is an investment in your citizens. This is an investment in the workforce development of your constituents, of your state, of your city, of your region. So in many ways, yes, this is an investment not only in our own citizenry, but it's also a long-term investment in national security for all of those reasons that the talking points spell out. So I would leave it at that, because you're right, it can get a little hairy going into too much detail about which side wants to do what. So just keep it about, again, your own personal, this is what happened to me, and this is why I think you should provide this opportunity for more people in our state and city and region.
And just to add, I think in what you said, Athena, it's about the preparation too. So like if you know you're going in and it's someone who's maybe on like the conservative side or whatever, getting to know what they're invested in, what's important to them, what they support, and trying to find a way to connect that, right? I mean, we've all said it, like MPCA, Jonathan and his team have great resources. So if you go in knowing like this person doesn't support X, Y, and Z, but they're really into this, figure out how to tie it in, like work with the team and try to figure out what you can appeal to that might be more amenable to them.
Thank you. That's really helpful. I have one more question, since this will probably be the last question, but could you talk about more? You've already kind of both hit on this, but more of the challenges that you've had in some of your meetings, and what maybe first time, advocacy, our PCVs or people who really care about Peace Corps can expect. We've received a lot of feedback from our PCVs as well, who are worried about different aspects of kind of talking to representatives and staff. So if you could just share with us how you recommend volunteers and others kind of getting around this, and some of the challenges that they can expect when talking as well.
Lori, did you want to go first, or should I hop in? So I would just manage this expectation that, well, first I would start by what you're doing is critical to the functioning of our democracy, right? If we are a representative democracy, the elected officials need to hear from their constituents early and often. So anything you can do to continue to be participating in this kind of work is important. That said, like, these meetings can go short, they can go long, but I think it's important to understand that it's a process. And if you can get in a little bit about how it's important to you, how it's important to your city, district, region, and say those 3 asks, which the summary was 450 minimum for the budget, S32 or HR 1456 sign-ons, then that's good. You have accomplished what you've intended to do. So understand that this is a much larger process that Jonathan, Miriam, and their team is working on throughout the year. But this is a great opportunity for us to make a big splash in one moment in time. But understand that this is something that has to happen as part of the process of our working. So don't lose heart if you don't feel, oh, I forgot to tell that one story, or like, oh, I didn't get that one point in. That's okay, because then you can always send your thank you, you can send your follow-up. And to that point, yes, it's important to be briefed so that you know and feel comfortable with the information, but you can always say, I'm not sure, let me get back to you as well. Never feel like don't throw out numbers or statistics or data that you're not sure about. Say, you know what, I'm not sure I have that fact straight, so let me and the team get back to you on that, and you always can. So again, go in there, tell your story, and you'll be successful.
Thank you. And Lori?
Yeah, I mean, I think Athena nailed it in terms of just like expectations and like not being too hard on yourself. I'll be really honest. The congressman with whom we've met mostly is just a big fan of the Peace Corps, so we haven't really encountered any major challenges. I continue to be honest. He's done some things recently that are a little hard to swallow for me personally and several of my RPCVs. So I think future meetings might be a little more challenging. So ask me again in a year. But I think it's just like Athena said, like, you know, don't feel disappointed. Don't feel like you didn't work hard. I mean, some of our less Peace Corps friendly legislators, they just don't schedule meetings, you know, and you don't want to take that personally if you keep getting rejection. You just keep trying, right? And just know that every step you're taking is doing something, right? Even if I mean, even if they don't walk out being like, I'm going to fund everything and I'm quitting my job to join the Peace Corps tomorrow, you know, like you have to be reasonable in your expectations of what's going to come of these meetings. And know that like everything you're doing is productive and super helpful.
Thank you, Lori. So we've reached the time that we have for this panel, and I want to thank you both as well for joining us and sharing these really important experiences that I'm sure will help so many people in terms of kind of, you know, visualizing preparing this as well as executing it. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.